2, 3.
So we got quite a few beloved Cowboy Bebop storylines recreated for the first season of Netflix's live-action adaptation. Those wacky environmentalist space warriors, the nigh-unstoppable Mad Pierrot, the sorta-Kareem Abdul Jabar but not really Hakim, and several more. However, I can't help but feel we missed out on a few great storylines from the anime. So here's 10 that I would love to see in Season 2 if Netflix doth deign us worthy of it.
He's an easygoing dude, ain't he? Sure is, Antonio. Nice fella.
Perhaps the one story that's absence most surprised me was Sympathy for the Devil, originally the 6th session of the original series and a classic case of the Bebop crew going after a both delightfully pulpy and tragic villain. Win, an 80-year-old man in a child's body.
And if you had it, it'd just be a case of casting pearls before swine.
A condition created after, what else, an astral gate accident. Jet explains it to Spike in an eloquent bit of exposition.
His pineal body continually produces a substance like melatonin that inhibits aging.
Does it make a lick of sense? Nah, but it's a fun concept, and one that got the episode a lot of heat thanks to, and big ol' spoilers here along with the rest of these entries, Spike kills a child. I mean, technically he's old as dirt and also a total psychopath, but he looks like a kid. A kid who can play a mean harmonica solo at that.
Ain't no 6-year-old boy understand the true meaning of the blues.
I reckon I might.
Wynn's creepy aesthetic, tragic story, and horrific ending could not only make for a great episode if done correctly, but even a multi-episode arc. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but it would be far better than Sad Daddy's Boy Vicious.
Slug! His only achievements come from the doings of others.
There are also some great scenes that could be taken from the episode and applied to others just as effectively.
Sounds kind of expensive.
My personal favorite is when Faye is looking for food and finds the fridge empty save for a can of dog food, with Ein waiting nearby for his din-din. Of course, Faye is a naturally selfish and gross person when push comes to shove.
You know, I think your heart's made out of lead.
And so she eats the dog food. Classic Faye.
If you don't work, you don't eat. You're a hunting dog. Hunt up some food.
And honestly, just more Bebop crew going hungry scenes would be much appreciated.
I want some bell peppers and beef.
Speaking of going hungry, here's one that obviously wouldn't have worked as well without Ed, but nonetheless, I desperately want to see translated to live action. In Cowboy Bebop's most overt reference, perhaps in the entire series, tantamount to the menagerie of Blade Runner Easter eggs in Episode 8 of the Netflix series, we get a whole episode based on Alien. Except instead of a phallic Lovecraftian hellbeast taking out the crew one by one after sploding out of John Hurt's chest,
Not again.
we get a mutated Ganymede rock lobster that had been thrown in a refrigerator and forgotten long ago. Literally the most relatable conundrum in the entire show. I can't even tell you how many times I've come across leftovers with zero idea how they got there or what they had originally been. Anyway, the whole episode, entitled Toys in the Attic, plays out much like Ridley Scott's classic horror picture, including seemingly sucking the creature out of the airlock and Spike rockin' a flamethrower a la Dallas in Alien, although his fate is far less violent. We also get a lovely 2001: A Space Odyssey reference to end things on. It's a classic of the series, easily top 5 for me, and features Ed just straight up eating the monster.
My pudding. Ow.
Waltz for Venus is another classic Bebop session that's maybe not as iconic as those last two, but tells a lovely little tragic standalone story. Exactly what, in my opinion, made the original flow so well. And speaking of flow, this one gives Spike a wonderfully human story. Sure, it's inevitably beset by tragedy, R.I.P. Rocco. But the way he stops and shows Rocco here how he uses fluidity to achieve his fighting style and basically just a whole truncated Bruce Lee speech, it's really charming, heartwarming stuff. And yeah, I love it. And then we meet Rocco's blind sister, whom Rocco stole a gray ash plant for in order to cure her blindness.
They're very hard to grow, worth tens of millions each.
Sure, it could probably feel pretty hack if done poorly, but at the same time, it's like a fill-in-the-blanks tragedy. Just don't overdo it, get some good actors to play Rocco and Stella, and bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself a quality Cowboy Bebop episode. And again, it's standalone, which is exactly what Bebop needs, while also giving us insights into Spike. Sure, we kinda already have all those insights thanks to that endless flashback episode, but let's just pretend that never happened and enjoy Spike teaching this hapless criminal how to do kung fu or whatever.
You're tense, I'm calm.
So while I'm skipping Jamming with Edward as well as her send-off episode Hard Luck Woman, because, well, it's kind of obvious that they need to be included in the follow-up season, I do think it's fair enough to bring in her first episode as a member of the Bebop crew, Ganymede Elegy, which doesn't really have much to do with Ed, oddly enough. Instead, it's a backstory episode for Jet, who in the anime, of course, doesn't have a wife and daughter. He still has the detective crippled by his traitorous partner plot, but additionally gets his own sorta-Julia in the form of Alyssa. There's not any Red Dragon Syndicate action in this love story, however. Instead, we get the simple tale of Jet's seemingly true love leaving him behind with a broken watch, which might be the subject of the show's most on-the-nose exploration of letting go of the past.
Time never stands still.
This is one we probably won't see as is, but could theoretically be repurposed to explore his past with his now very bitter ex-wife. However, I can't really see that episode ending with Jet deciding to free himself entirely of his past since, you know, the whole daughter thing. My opinion, as much as I like this episode, maybe just skip it. Which does make this entire entry kind of pointless, but I just wanted to talk about Ganymede Elegy. Moving on.
Bye, Jet.
Another one that would be a bit of a stretch for this iteration of the show, but would have made for a killer episode in Season 1, is the excellent two-parter Jupiter Jazz, a title that I mispronounce very often to very humorous effect. It's partially a mythology episode wherein Faye runs off with all the crew's money, and while trying to find her, Ed stumbles upon something called Codename Julia. This of course leads Spike to the moon of Callisto and into the company of Grin, who of course is a different character in the Netflix series played by Mason Alexander Park. We don't get much backstory for Grin in the new series, but chances are in the current political climate, Grin won't be an ex-soldier who, given an experimental drug, gains more feminine features. Specifically, well, boobs. Anyway, in Jupiter Jazz, we find out that Grin was war buddies with Vicious, who wound up betraying Grin after giving him a music box with a tracker inside. This led to Grin's stint in prison and vis-a-vis his body transformation. Grin sets up a red-eye deal with Vicious, again perfect for Season 1 considering the choice to have Vicious dealing red-eye behind the Elder's back, and winds up attempting and failing to kill Vicious. It's a mythology episode that gives us lots of little clues about Spike and Vicious without really telling us a whole lot, making it borderline standalone and, as is often the case with Bebop, extremely tragic.
Do I really look like I have money?
One of my minor complaints about Season 1 of Cowboy Bebop Seinfeld Edition
that comes with free cheesy bread, right?
Was that it doesn't really explain the astral gates or how they're used in getting around. They're a super cool aspect of the world and feature some pretty rad action sequences in the anime. The session, Bohemian Rhapsody, focuses on the astral gates and the Gate Corporation who own them. Out of all these entries, Bohemian Rhapsody is perhaps the least integral, but it tells a fun story about the Bebop crew trying to make a big bounty, only to discover that the guy they're looking for is just some senile old chess master who helped build the original gates. The story of Chessmaster Hex and his online match with Ed could still make for a great episode in a potential Season 2, and could easily be used to connect to Faye's Deep Freeze if the showrunners were so compelled. That said, it could also just be a world-building standalone. Guys, I know I'm being super subtle here, but I just want standalone bounty episodes.
It won't work!
It will if it never rains.
Another pre-Edward episode that I was a bit surprised didn't get utilized for Season 1 is Heavy Metal Queen, which introduces us to another iconic one-off character, VT, a space trucker who gets a little extra scratch from this guy, Otto, who has a long-standing bet with VT that he can guess what her initials stand for.
You be careful now, Otto.
If he was a history nut, he might guess that they're probably for Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, but that'd still be wrong. Nope, after a pretty typical Bebop adventure, complete with Bounty of the Week and part-time Woody Allen impressionist Decker here, getting tracked down by Faye, Spike guesses that BT's real name is
Victoria Terpskode.
And that's all thanks to a photo on her pendant, that of her deceased bounty hunter husband,
The legendary bounty hunter Terpskode.
who was the reason she hates bounty hunters in the first place.
Lion lowlife bounty hunter, I'm not paying for your drink.
The core conflict of the session, and another great character-centric standalone episode.
I got a thing for reals.
Okay, so before I kinda suggested I was focusing on episodes that didn't necessarily need Ed, and this one's definitely stretching that, but I gotta put it out there. I really wanna see the Bebop crew high as all hell. I wanna see some trippy nonsense, and the 17th session of the OG series, Mushroom Samba, does just that.
Hey, mister. This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
Also, Faye spends most of the runtime with diarrhea because she got greedy and ate out-of-date rations. Just pure poetry here, people. Anyway, the whole plot is basically just that the Bebop is out of fuel and food and crash lands on Io,
That's the least of our troubles.
where Ed gets into a crime plot involving mushrooms, which she gives to the crew to see if they're safe to eat. Spoiler, they are not.
Hey, the world really is a great place.
The episode also contains an element of old blaxploitation films, specifically my personal favorite Pam Grier film, Coffee, by calling this character Coffee.
Oh, I ain't here because they didn't try, lover.
Not the least subtle thing in the world, but if you're paying homage to one of the best low-budget crime flicks of the 70s, go for it, man. Oh, there's also the character named Shaft, which, again, super blatant, but I'll take any reference to the careers of Richard Roundtree and Gordon Parks I can get. Oh, and this is super off topic, but RIP to stuntman Tommy Lane. He's this guy in Shaft. Oh, and it's not the same genre, but like Shaft coming into town with this coffin, that's an obvious reference to 1966's Sergio Corbucci masterpiece, Django. Oh man, this episode made for me. Anyway, Ed winds up seemingly saving the day by taking on a bounty with just Ein and herself to do the work. She's, sorta successful.
Take the mushroom!
All right.
It's a great episode to showcase Ed, but also could have easily been stripped of its narrative to allow some trippy shenanigans in Season 1.
I feel like we need more phases to get the meter going.
Now that Ed is around, however, maybe we can see the full hallucinogenic tomfoolery play out, complete with those groovy genre references. While I love a lot of these sessions more than Boogie Woogie Feng Shui, it's easily one of those episodes that I feel needs to be presented at some point.
You sure about that?
It's another Jet-centric episode, and unlike his old Flame angle, is much less tough to pull off. Not to add another tangent to this video, but, here's another tangent. When I was double-checking my notes for this video, I found out that Mustafa Shakir, who plays Jet in the Netflix version, is 45 years old.
Wait, what?
Making him actually older than his anime counterpart, which I spent the entire series thinking was the other way around. Not much to that, really. Damn, dude looks great.
We're lose track for time.
Yeah, don't get your slacks on a swivel.
Anyway, the story of Jet looking for his old friend Pao, a master of feng shui, only to find his grave and to go on a bullet-ridden adventure with Pao's daughter using a weird Chinese magnetic compass thingy, is exactly the kind of strange, borderline mysticism that could theoretically help shake up the mood of the Netflix series. The storyline also features a fantastic Astral Gate subplot and action sequences within that Astral Gate, plus a syndicate other than the Red Dragons, and of course ends with a little sublime tragedy tinged with hopefulness. Plus, if live-action Jet is contending with not being able to see his daughter, then having to take care of his old friend's daughter in a big ol' Mars-set adventure would be the perfect stepping stone toward whatever catharsis that character is meant to find. And finally, I really want some Cowboy Funk in my life. This episode was technically adapted into the Teddy Bomber episode, but man, that was just a waste of that character. In addition to these silly literal cowboy antics, the joke about the Teddy Bomber's manifesto is one of the best gags in the entire series. Considering we technically don't see him die, maybe we could get another shot at his anarchy-fueled antics, and we could even introduce the character of Andy, who is just an absolute delight and deserves the live-action treatment. Obviously, we will just have to see if anything happens with a season 2, but I'm actually really hoping it happens. Sure, the showrunners face an uphill battle to fan approval, but there's so much talent and great source material that it'd be a shame not to exploit that. Anyway, till next time, see ya, Space Cowboy.